Oklahoma football mood tracker. Where are we at right now? Now, there was a lot of debate before the show about where we were going to go. And I told Director Colin, we're going to go with a broad term here. The current mood for Oklahoma football and the fan base there is that of being initiated. If you've ever been initiated into anything, a fraternity, a club, homeowners association, I don't know what in the world you do in your personal life, but if you've ever had to go through that process, it's tough. It can be arduous. It's rewarding on the other side. But I think Oklahoma football and a lot of the fan base there, they kind of feel like they've been initiated now. And they're at that table. Now, they haven't won the national championship under Lincoln Riley. Like, they are not universally compared yet to the likes of Alabama annually, Clemson annually, but they're right there. Like, they're at that next tier, at the very top of the next tier. You could argue they've already been at the bottom of tier one. They've got the offense, but they've always had the offense. They got the head coach, but they've always had the head coach. They've always been pretty premier or close to it any given year in those categories. Offense, never really been a problem for Oklahoma. Defensively, they've been a pretender. They've been a total paper tiger. Everyone's known it. Deep down, their fan base has known it, and that has changed. And as that has changed, so too has the feeling about what Oklahoma football is capable of, not in just the regular season, but if they get into a playoff setting. You know, they're not going down 28-zip with no chance of retaliation. They're not having the walls painted with their blood like they did against LSU in 2019. If you can play defense, and to be honest with you, if you can show the SEC a thing or two about playing defense like they were in the latter part of this year, well, then you're in that club. No one takes you for granted. No one looks at you as a little speed bump, a nice cute story, but ultimately a speed bump once you face them in the playoff. No one looks at you like that anymore. And I think that's how Oklahoma fans feel. And if the rest of the country doesn't, I think they may soon enough. So let me give you two different takes here. Number one, there was a lot of talk about how they were the hottest team in the country at the end of this past season, and how there were even some fringe arguments that they should be involved in the playoff discussion. I never bought into that. I talked about it on the show at the time. Like, I loved what they were doing at the end of the year, but losses matter. And you got two of them, Kansas State, Iowa State, like those matter. And I'm for the whole regular season mattering. I'm not for the early games being treated like preseason, and we value the latter season games more. No, you lose like that, and you got to pay the price. So Oklahoma didn't belong in the college football playoff this past year. Most people didn't believe they did. But just as I say that, I am totally buying them as being right there in that conversation this year. Think about where this was. Think about the turn that's happened. They had lost to, like I said, Kansas State. They had lost to Iowa State, and they were going into that Texas game. And there were a lot of folks just like gnashing their teeth over the idea that we're right on the precipice of having lost 3 straight games. Have we lost it? I mean, if we lose this game to Texas, what are we saying about Lincoln Riley? Well, what you're saying is he's a great coach who just lost 3 games in a row. That was our answer on the show. That was blown way out of proportion. But be that as it may, when Oklahoma finally decided it was time to press play on the 2020 season, I look at it as the day they beat Texas. They never lost again. So here's how I look at it, because we're talking 2021 now. Where's the mood right now? I view the 2021 Oklahoma football season as essentially having begun that day against Texas, because there was obviously a different product on the field from that point moving forward than there was earlier in the year, and that's just a byproduct of how uneven 2020 was. You can talk about every team dealing with COVID all you want to. Some teams dealt with a whole lot more than other teams did. There was a lot of variance program to program. Oklahoma finally got their act together, and they were a really good team. You could argue maybe they were one of the 4 best teams in the country at the end of the year. You could argue that. But I will say this. We're looking forward. Forget about what happened. We're looking forward. You got Spencer Rattler coming back. I think a lot of people will talk about that, as they should. Really good depth and talent at running back and wide receiver coming back. Everyone should be talking about that, and they should. But they've had those things before, like I was talking about. What has this added spark and what feels a lot more oven than microwave now, if you will, for the Oklahoma fan base is you know that you got a championship caliber defense, and it's not going anywhere. We did a segment about 6 months ago. It was before the season started. And I did a segment where I just flat out said, like, I feel like Lincoln Riley is going to win a national title at Oklahoma. It wasn't a prediction for a given year, but we had been getting a lot of feedback in our inbox from people who kept saying, Oklahoma can never win a national title because Oklahoma can't play defense. And that wasn't true in my estimation. What was true is Oklahoma hasn't won a national title because Oklahoma hasn't been able to play situational, opportunistic defense. They've just been run over. I mean, there's been no shot in some of these games they played against bigger competition. But just because it had been doesn't mean, and never did mean, it always was going to be. I mean, there's no motivation whatsoever for people to keep doing the same thing when they're getting terrible results. And so you're slowly but surely now seeing the whole Alex Grinch effect take root. It wasn't going to happen overnight. We talked about that in that segment. Wasn't going to happen overnight. So Grinch came in, they still kind of underperformed, but everyone wanted to beat him with pillows still and say, ha, ha, you got the same hire or new hire but same results. Well, that wasn't the case. Now you're starting to see it. So now, like, Oklahoma fans already feel it. They already feel like everything they saw to end this last year is validation as to what they expect to be this year. I think that there is a lot of this same energy around Oklahoma as the kind of energy that exists nationally around Texas A&M. A lot of people have to see it to believe it. I'm about to talk about this in a second with A&M. A lot of people have to see it to believe it. So I think as the perception internally in the fan base is already there. They feel like they're there. Now we just got to go validate it and prove it on the field. I think a lot of folks will never believe that Oklahoma's there until they prove it on the field. But here's the good news. They play these seasons, and they do one of them every single year. 2021, I think, is going to be Lincoln Riley's best team, top to bottom. It's going to be right in line with being in the most advantageous position, quarterback, in America next year. Outside of Norman, Oklahoma, kind of a crapshoot. For that matter, those of you who want all the parity in college football could be wide open in 2021. It could very well be Oklahoma's year. It could be that a first-year starter at Clemson or Alabama ends up shining and the same old prevail. Could be, but I'm just telling you, there's a lot of reason for optimism around Oklahoma, and there's a lot of reason for those folks to feel very good about where that program is now and moving forward.